Look, we have our guest today, Shelagh Gough, is joining us from Swindon, and she's worked in a lot of these areas that we've been talking about. She's a woman of great experience, and she also happens to be a master astrologer. So maybe you want to comment on the question of, you know, what's going on in space and time, because astrology is an attempt to find meaning mathematically from the movement of the heavens. You know, I have questions about how it works and does it, you know. But tell us about your reflections on what you've been listening to and what you're doing. Shelagh.
Yes, hi everybody. Well, yes, I weirdly have worked as an astrologer for over 30 years, but at the same time as I was a teacher full-time in education in the UK, and then I trained to be a therapist in psychoanalytic psychotherapy. So I found it very interesting what Jane has been talking about in connection with the unconscious mind. But what has been mind-blowing about listening to everybody is that everything I've ever thought has come into this kind of mix. I don't know, it's like a big cake we're mixing up here of ideas. And I think there's so much that I could say, but I've been furiously writing things down and thinking, well, what are we really talking about? One of the things that I think has come up in my mind is whose pain is the greatest? I think this causes a lot of conflict between people and families and worldwide. You know, who's suffered the most and who's had the rawest deal. And of course, that's a whole new topic that we probably haven't got time to go into. But the unconscious drives most of that pain. And it's a huge area to think about, particularly with regard to how we can peaceably live together. And the other thing that's come up in our discussion is, you know, the change in technology, this massive, massive technical revolution that we've been through, which is affecting our children, small children. And when I was teaching, I used to teach early years. I was an inspector. Oh my goodness. I tried not to be a scary inspector, but I used to get the children lying down for 5 minutes every day just to relax. And I used to do it myself in the classroom at lunchtime. I think Thomas has hit upon something very important about how we rush about and we don't give our brains a chance to assimilate what we've taken in. And this is revolutionary, the kinds of things we're thinking about, because as an educationalist, that topic has come into the mix as well. And I've been thinking a lot about the education system, particularly in the UK, because that's been my experience. And I retired when I was 50, which is nearly 20 years ago, because I didn't like the way it was going. I actually resigned as being an inspector of schools because everybody kept telling me that change was good, that we had to keep changing everything and moving everything. And it didn't seem to resonate with me. I wondered why we couldn't just stand still and breathe for a bit. And so we've got caught up in something as human beings, which is non-thinking. And that, I feel, is the root of a lot of things that have been talked about today, particularly the nuclear disarmament conversation, because we don't hear about these things, the things that we've been talking about. We don't hear about them in the media. And everything has been sort of damped down. And that makes, I get angry about it. And that, just to mention astrology, yes, there is a full moon in Gemini, but that hasn't really struck me as important. What I think is important astrologically is that there are a lot of planets in Capricorn at the moment, all gathered together. And I think I'm right in saying that the last time this happened was during the birth of Christ. So it's about the downfall of governments and politicians. And I'm surprised, personally, that things haven't been bigger and more explosive than they've been, although I think they are beginning to go that way. because a lot of planets congregating in Pluto, particularly Pluto and Capricorn, mean that we, the people, are beginning to recognise that things need to change politically. And I could go on for hours. I've been researching economics, and that's blown my mind. So there's something called heterodox economics, and that's like fringe economics, and there are lots of huge thinkers, economists, giving speeches and conferences about this new type of economics, and politicians are taking absolutely no notice, unless they are taking notice but we don't know about it and they're too frightened to tell us. So I guess I've skipped through a load of things in not very much depth, but I've just been really excited to hear what people are thinking about all over the world. But to kind of concentrate it all, I think about the ordinary everyday person. I think about the person who doesn't have access to these kinds of conversations and doesn't read the things that we read, know the things that we know. And that's been what I've been thinking about concentrating my efforts on, writing for everyday people in a non-intellectual way about what we're doing to ourselves. So that's my contribution. Don't want to say too much more.
Well, thank you so much, Sheila. That's and Sheila lives in Swindon, which is a town I know and love well, near Avebury, where the Druid community of Britain, one of their centres. And it also houses a lot of the think tanks of Britain. Swindon has the social science and scientists sort of funding agencies who make policy decisions. So it's interesting, the question of, you know, the gap between the intellectual and the ordinary person. I've just been working on the concept of emotional intelligence, because our education system is geared to IQ, to intellectual brilliance. To get to Cambridge or Oxford, you have to, you know, pass millions of exams and blah, blah. But we sort of neglect emotional intelligence. And I was writing yesterday about Daniel Goleman and the whole movement for emotional intelligence as equally important as cerebral or mathematical intelligence. I think part of my complaint about mathematics being in power everywhere is that it privileges a certain type of intelligence, cerebral, numerical intelligence, which not everybody has. The average person doesn't have and won't ever need. But ethical intelligence or emotional intelligence, we all need, which is like to be polite, kind, helpful, loving, truth-telling, standing up for justice. You know, those things we cannot do without as a world or a society. So I want a revolution in our school systems and our universities that end this silence. I think it was Rosalind Cook talked about this deafening silence. The media don't talk about the important things like the world's potential self-annihilation. And we don't talk about the lack of ethics in our education school systems. In fact, the opposite goes on, bullying among teachers, among students, you know, the whole thing. The kind of thing Priscilla's trying to prevent. It's so important. Okay, so look, I want to move on to hear from our speaker in Singapore, Thumbi, who's been amazingly persistent in pursuing a dream he had, which he's going to share with us, I hope, of a focus point, a spiritual lighthouse, I call it, where religious, intellectual, philosophical, you know, best practice could be showcased in a particular location, somewhere in the world. And he's designed the visions. Perhaps, Murali, you can tell us what you're planning and share with them some of the conversations we've had about where it might be.
Okay, thanks again for letting me speak about this project concept. So many of you who attended the last month conference meeting are aware of this project concept. So it is a science, spirituality, come a bit of tourism theme park, where there will be an immersive type of experience given to the visitors to understand the work of universe, how the universe started from Big Bang, who is Almighty, who are we humans, what is the purpose, what is going on, all these things. So there will be a kind of education with amalgamation of science and spirituality. There is one concept within that project called Universarium, where there will be a ride, a realistic space travel ride given, during which time this amalgamation of science and spirituality will be given for a better understanding. So when people have this kind of ride, it is a immersive experience that will give a very good impact. So when they go out, they will understand they will be having a thorough knowledge of this universe, how it was started, what is going on. There will be a better understanding. Though many religion has told about this will be a kind of amalgamation with science. So with science and amalgamated with the spirituality and religion, there will be a more good impact for the visitors to realize. So this project concept I got on Christmas Day of year 2008. Though I am a Hindu, I got it on that day. The way I got this concept idea, it is a kind of amazing to myself. I am surprised myself because I am not an architect, I am not a design engineer, I am not a saint also, just a normal human being. Because there is some things that happened during my teenage that gradually brought up to this level. After this concept, I developed as an animation and was able to present it in 2015 Parliament of World Religions. After my presentation in this Parliament of World Religions, it is now gaining more attention around the world. So I think now I have come to this level. I have joined this WIF and Mr. Thomas. I think he will be the one good leader to push further to realize this project. So the project title is called Almighty's World Peace Tower and the Universarium, Next Wonder of the World. So Next Wonder of the World is inserted to gain more attraction. It is a kind of first biggest temple for all religions at one place. Not for worship, but to realize the cosmos. Or we can say a super mega science, spirituality, tourism theme park. A one-day visit to there, about some 10,000 visitors can be designed to visit there. So these 10,000 visitors can pay a small fees, have a thorough knowledge of what is happening in this universe. And with these fees, they can be utilized to eradicate poverty also. So that is the main aim. One is to give the realization about this universe. Next is to eradicate poverty. So now I'm having contact with you, Mr. Thomas, to see further what can be done. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Thumbi, for sharing. I mean, I've seen the diagrams, the plans that he's developed over the last, few years. And just to summarize, the idea is to build what he calls, a universarium, a peace tower. So it'd be like, like a great tower, like the CNN tower in Toronto or something like that, dedicated to interfaith understanding, peace, harmony, the study of what I call the God force, but also science. So it would showcase, let's say we got the 100 greatest scientists on the planet at the moment and the 100 most advanced religious thinkers. And we asked them to design this together, to put the content together. And then people would go through the galleries and explore. I mean, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it's the next wonder of the world, as Murali calls it. So I had an experience. I think I know where it ought to be. Okay, so I mean that's the big question that Thumbi's been worrying about. Where should this thing be? And he's written to people in Dubai and all over the place, and they all say maybe, but nobody jumps to it, right? So through a series of interesting synchronicities and coincidences, I think I've discovered where it ought to be. This is my proposition to you, and I'd love responses. I think it should be in India, because India is the homeland of the gods, and all the great religions have come from India. And this would be India's project to the world, gift to the world, reconciling science and spirituality. That's what Indian thinkers do best. That's what the World Intellectual Forum is trying to do, right? And then I was thinking, well, where should it be? It's got to be somewhere important. So, okay, how about the Himalayas? Obviously, no. And then it was shown to me through a miraculous series of strange synchronicities I can tell you about, that on the very southern tip of India, there's a little mountain called Potala, after which the Potala mountain in Lhasa is named. And I didn't know that. It's sacred to Shiva and Shakti. And it's where, so not only is it Shiva's mountain, it's also where the greatest Buddha, Avalokiteshvara, lives. Now that's mind-blowing. So the Dalai Lama, who's supposed to be the manifestation of Avalokiteshvara, he's only one of them, right, at any one time. But the real Avalokiteshvara is in permanent residence on this mountain in South India called Potala. That's the original Potala after which the hill in Lhasa is named. So I was thinking, well, wow, this is quite amazing. Because if it could be built, if this tower could be built at the foot of that mountain in southern India, near Cape Cormoran, it's like India's gateway to the south. It's like a lighthouse, a spiritual lighthouse. And it would be, it is a place, that mountain, revered by all Hindus worldwide, all Jains, and all Buddhists, because it's where their great, Buddha in waiting, Avalokiteshvara, is in residence. And it's there are people in Japan and China that know that mountain and revere it and invoke it every day in prayers. In every branch of Buddhism, it's known and revered. So I think if the Indian government or the local government of the state that controls that domain in India were to give the go-ahead, we got a team of, as I say, scientists and spiritual leaders to work on the design. We also need architects, but I think Satyen can tell us he's got some architects that could help. And then I think we would get funding from countries like Japan, for instance. There are Japanese scholars of Buddhism who've gone to South India and they've discovered really, really ancient Buddhist esoteric teachings that have been left there. And I'm sure the Buddhists of Japan would flock to fund this. The same in China, where there's millions and millions of people for that whom that mountain is sacred. So, and then of course all over the world, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. So anyway, combine the Hindu, the Buddhist, and the Jain love of truth and science and spirituality, and let's build Thumbi's tower. This is my proposal. And the World Intellectual Forum should be one of the bodies. We can take a lead and open it to other groups. So what do people think? Do you think it sounds like a good location? Satyen, do you want to just respond on the business of the architectural stuff? Tell us about your architect team.
I have a team underneath our organization called New Gaia Green Technology, which designs green buildings, regenerative buildings. So if anyone has any projects that they would like to create a regenerative building, whether retrofit or something brand new that has designs that take into account the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational dimensions of being, I have an incredible team that is worldwide that we help design and create those type of structures. And so in terms, we were chatting, right, Thomas, regarding creating a building which has the sacred geometry, the sacred imprints and aspects of many different philosophies. So we have a team that can generate and create that.
Yeah, Satyen and I were discussing the Nonagon project, which is another project my institute's proposed, building a 9-sided building on top of the Pentagon. This is a really divine project. This is being naughty. But if, as Satyen said, we're gods in incarnation trying to save the world, let's be naughty, right? The Pentagon is the single biggest spender of world money in economics. And it's all going down the drain. They might as well just pour it down the drains. It's going to military, and which is ultimately feeding ego, the flames of ego, So I'm saying let's build a nonagon, 9-sided building on top of the Pentagon, which would be the US Department of Peace. People like Priscilla and her restorative justice programs, they'd all be funded from the nonagon. It would have exactly the same budget as the Pentagon, and gradually how people perceive the USA would change. I've gone into the research, you know, the Pentagon was put up under Roosevelt, who was a visionary, a good, great president. I think someone like Biden would see the potential for shifting attitudes to America and redefining America's role in the world. It should be peace building instead of warmongering, right? Now, the strange coincidence with Thumbi's project is Thumbi has also dreamed up the same idea of a nonagon. The only other guy on the planet that I know. So that this makes us, I think we're receiving energy from the same source. Tell us about your nonagon project, Thumbi, as well. Can we hear you?
Me?
Yeah. What you thought up the nonagon idea independently, didn't you? And you've designed a building for India, which could house like an Indian Department of Peace, in my opinion.
Okay, this nonagon concept I got some three or 4 years ago, when I had a friend, Facebook friend, who was talking about United Nations planning to build 6 regional headquarters around the world. But I don't know whether he was talking real thing, whether he's a fraudster or scammer, I don't know. But because of that inspiration, I got to develop this nonagon concept. And with the help of one of my relative who is an engineer, design engineer, I got it animated also. So this nonagon concept, I have only the architectural feature from external point of view, not all the details for the internal. So external architectural view, it is unique. I can say it is a first of the kind. There is no design like this in the world that has this kind of design. The nonagon is not a flat surface, flat line on the plan view, but it is kind of a chakra which the Hindu god Lord Vishnu is having in his hand to kill the evil forces. So it is like a chakra with the 9 serrated decks, cantilever decks. So from the plan view, it will be looking like a chakra, and in the side view, it will be looking like a normal building, but with the hangout cantilever decks. So this nonagon, since you are recommending that it should be built in India, I will try my best to contact the army forces, the civil defense. I will try to contact who is the head of the defense there. I will send the email to him, but it is up to them to decide. I already submitted to the Singapore force also here to the government to accept it as a proposal for any of their administrative building. But so far they have not replied me. So what they are thinking, I don't know. But after a while, maybe next month, I will try to contact the Indian Defense Force, who is the in charge there.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that the nonagon project, if we had one in America and one in India being built at the same time, can you imagine the power of that as a message spiritually?
The same thing for the Peace Tower also. If you see my presentation in my website that I gave in 2015, I have already mentioned about this Peace Tower, Almighty's World Peace Tower and the Universarium, to be built in both, one in East, one in the West. In the West is America, and in the East, I preferred is India, but I am not sure whether India is possible or not because of the government there. I don't know. But in East can be any part. Even now, the Dubai government is considering, they are still reviewing my submission. They haven't replied me. They told that they have to pass through 40 departments to finally decide about this project concept. So
yeah, there is the problem of bureaucracy. Wherever we want to build it, there will be bureaucracy to deal with. We have to find a way to cut through all that, and through the simple power of the idea, manifest it. So anyway, thank you so much for your contribution, and
thank you.
I appreciate your patience and perseverance in this matter. I think I'd like to hear, we have, we're shortly coming to the end, but we're a distinguished scientist from India with us, Dr. Mishra, who has been active in international scientific work, particularly on radiation as a therapy. You know, radiology is part of modern medicine. And if we were to build this project, you know, we would want to consult the scientists. So do share with us your thoughts, Dr. Mishra, about what you've been listening to, and, you know, what can science do to help save the world? It's responsible for all the nuclear weapons. Can you undo them, please, or do something else with your science? You need to unmute, sir. We can't hear you. No, you're still muted.
Yeah, okay.
Now we can hear you, yes.
Okay. So the cross-section of talk on variety of subjects is interesting for me as a scientist. But I must tell you that there are issues, there are levels of our understanding. And to imagine that a kind of new idea that we'll be able to pursue, bringing peace on the earth, that will be quite amazing if it happens. My personal feeling is it will not happen. The second point that I'd like to mention is the issue of science and spirituality you talked about. And also a little bit Bharti touched upon. The science is skeptical. If you look at the approach of the scientist towards spirituality, there is a certain amount of skepticism. That is not because of the bias, but because of the real situation. Because to imagine that merely evolution of consciousness will lead you to become top scientist of the world, or maybe you reach to the godly qualities, is not possible. It will not happen. So our course to understand science and to understand spirituality is not going to be united for a long time to come. Simply because the way we look at science, the way we look at spirituality, they are very entirely different things. Spirituality, people imagine that merely meditating, merely concentrating to a particular power, you can acquire superpowers. You can become beyond science, which is not going to happen. Never it happened. So all discoveries of the world, if you look at, came from the rational mind and our ability to question the phenomena. And there is a little bit question what our colleagues talked about, the conflict. See, in education field, out of my experience, conflict and question between questioning gets blurred. And a teacher sees a child as a indisciplined child, or maybe you can say a conflict-minded child when he questions. But the pursuit of science is such that unless you question, you will not be able to achieve new things. Today in world, there are many things that we do not know. There are many questions that have remained unanswered. I would have been happier if there was any easy way to understand dark energy, dark matter, astronomy, and so many things. I can talk about hundreds of such problems today. That is possible to understand in time to come through the pursuit of science. So my opinion is that any idea that you take up, it should not be looked at only from emotional angle. I felt as Dr. K.P. Mishra, therefore. No. you have to come down to the foundations of science. You have come down to learn things from the basic knowledge that is available, and then go on to get to new things. Isaac Newton would not have been able to discover gravity had he not been a mathematician. No, not at all. And therefore, to question, to generate people with the questioning mind is important. So I think time is running out, and I would not like to take time. My only advice is that the issue of science and spirituality has to be more closely examined. Why they are not uniting? Why we don't understand the languages of each approaches? Are there some people who have achieved a level of understanding that top of the scientists have not been able to? That is a question that we should debate. See, idea is to advance knowledge. The idea is to bring light to what we have not known so far. That is what science talks about. And as a trained scientist, practical scientist, I always believe that to imagine something with the best of the fertile mind is not going to solve the problem. The problem can be solved only by better understanding, deeper understanding, greater understanding of the natural phenomenon. We do not know so much about how things are happening. Our ability to predict is what we are trying to improve upon. I must just give you an example and close. We developed that age factor is one of the predictable parameter of the coronavirus attack. But immediately we learned, no, it is not true. Because young people also got attacked. Young people also are affected. They are also infected and they died. So that means our predictability has got lots of probability factor. Therefore, we should be cautious. We must be pursuing strongly the fundamentals of science and the approach of science. And we should develop in society more rational mind. A rational mind has got a difficulty that it go in the disequilibrium situation. Never mind, however, crazy mind is a crazy mind, but it discovers phenomena which are not so far. So as a scientist, I always wonder that how to understand something which we have not been able to understand. And on philosophical angle, my association to the group, my concern for the humanity has been to advance knowledge to the level that 50 years later, I am able to say, yes, this is what was not understood, and I made it understand. So therefore, discoveries have to come, and science has to be pursued, and we have to develop more rational mind, critical mind, and thinking ability of the mind. So subconscious mind or conscious mind, there is a lot to be understood in terms of behavior. I could go on for a long time on talking about, but I think I should be limiting because you asked my comment and I gave very honest comment, and this is coming from my heart. I'm not giving you any prepared speech.
Sure.
Just to tell that I believe in science, and I will urge that all of us must develop the bent of mind, the spirit of science. That is what will bring us to become a good philosopher. A good philosophy also is a science, but that philosophy has to be rational. That has to be on the base, not too much deviating from what is already known, what is working, and how we are discovering new things every day. So that part has to be taken in an enlightened way. And I think this way we will make a more fruitful discussion. And probably we will also return enlightened in groups like this. And particularly very interesting, and somebody raised the question of autocracy and democracy. It touches my heart that somewhere, I think, Thomas, I would like to urge you to think about it. that when democracy came to this world, it was an improvement of the governance system. But today, what is happening in the United States, what is happening elsewhere, it looks that we have to come up with another paradigm of administration. Human mind has reached to the level that democracy will start failing. And signs are appearing. I'm not saying imaginative way. There are signs of how those who are supposed to be custodian of democracy, they are misusing the whole concept of the democracy. So I think here is a time, here is a place, here is a forum to think about how we can guide society for future to become a good governed society. Today we are just going almost trailing. So my suggestion is that it's more important to develop a rational mind. It's more important to, a lot I have to talk to you about in terms of conflict management, what Bharti talked about. It isn't easy, I tell you. Just in one sentence, I want to tell you, if you take 1 million nobles who have been well groomed, Bharti, right from childhood, they will still go into conflict. All our deities have been fighting everywhere. So conflict is just not the bringing up alone. No. Conflict that comes in the mind is also in a very rational mind, very balanced mind, conflict comes. And conflict is the progress. Conflict is nature. Conflict has to be encouraged. If it doesn't, then we will remain where we are. That's just my few points.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Excellent. That was an interesting, different perspective, Dr. Mishra. And I mean, you injected a scientific note of caution on the enthusiasts among us who want to suddenly leap forward to paradise. Scientists are, on the whole, very cautious. You know, they want to test everything, manage everything. And I've known many scientists. I'm friends with many, scientists. It was a Nobel Prize winner, Maurice Wilkins, who appointed me to my first job in peace studies, who is one of the great scientists. And Professor Cedric Smith was, he founded the Conflict Research Society in London, which is now the major international body looking at conflict scientifically. Was a very, close inspiration to me. But I would, and so was Sir Tom Kibble, who's a professor of theoretical physics at Imperial College. He also founded Scientists for Peace and Global Responsibility, which is an international body of scientists campaigning for nuclear disarmament, solving the problems of the environment, changing the ethical focus of science. You see, scientists are like, forgive the analogy, little ants. You put them on the table, they'll scatter wherever the seed crumbs are. You have to steer them in the right direction, or before you know it, they're all making bioweapons and nuclear weapons and God knows what, torture chambers were done in Auschwitz and stuff. Science without ethics is blind. It's just about knowledge. So we have to bring back, so my opening remarks about recalibrating the relationship between science and mathematics particularly, and ethics, I think stands good. I think all that Dr. Mishra has done is point out it's going to take a while. This isn't going to happen tomorrow. And I would agree, obviously I'm a realist. I would say at least begin the convergence so that the march, the walk has to be a long march, but at least we can be heading for the same mountain. At the moment, scientists are heading off for one mountain and philosophers and ethicists heading for another one. At this rate, they're never going to meet. They're fighting for hegemony, each in their own way. All I'm saying, as a philosopher who is a philosopher of science as well as religion, is let's at least agree on the final goal, the mountain, that we're aiming for, and begin the walk from our different directions. And yes, it may take decades, it may take probably centuries till we actually get there. And when we've got there, we'll know because we've done the science and we've done the spiritual work. To help that, I just want to announce something. I don't know, many people may not know this. I'm a great fan of Sir Francis Bacon, who was Britain's greatest philosopher of science. He wrote a book called The Advancement of Learning. In 1624, it was finally its last edition published. And he was very clever because he said, it was dedicated to the king. He said, "Dear King James, here's all the things we know. Here's all the fields of knowledge we don't know. Here's this branch of knowledge that I think we need to invent. Here's the method we can use to do it with, scientific method. And please, can you found this academy, that department, that university, and let's get on with the work." And that started the scientific approach to knowledge that Dr. Mishra was talking about. And it founded, you know, the Royal Society in London, which is the sort of most prestigious of scientific bodies. But he left out religion. In that book, he said, "I can't discuss religious matters because they're too dangerous. I can't discuss spirituality or anything. I'm going to restrict myself to observable empirical reality. It's too dangerous now." What I'm saying, 400 years later, let's have a second edition of The Advancement of Learning. I'm going to ask all the scientists, yourself included, Dr. Mishra, and everyone else, and the scientific societies and bodies that you're involved with, and the Royal Society and all the other official groups in Ireland and every country in the world has great scientists. I want us to collaborate together on a new advancement of learning, right? And the question I want to ask every scientist on the planet is not what they know, because we don't need to know that. We know they know it. I want them all to tell us what they don't know. In every field of physics, mathematics, biology, space sciences, you know, everything. What is it they don't know? Because that's the new growing area. That's the growing tip of knowledge. So that if we actually did this honestly as a project, and I'm hoping we can get funding, and every scientist would sit down and say, you know, what don't you know about radiation? I'm sure there's lots of stuff. That would be a really exciting project. So I'm calling that the new advancement of learning. And the World Intellectual Forum, you know, will pioneer this. So any final comments? We're coming to the end. Has anyone got a last minute observation? We haven't heard from either of our Irish friends. Una, would you like to just say a few closing remarks? And Sean?
Do you want to go first, Sean, or will I? Okay.
Ladies first, go for it, Una.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's great to meet you all again. I've really enjoyed everything that has been said. It's just so fascinating and interesting. I'm a lawyer by profession, but I have also studied astrology, psychology, numerology, and sacred geometry. The only thing I haven't really studied is science. So I have a very broad-based interest in all of the topics that you've discussed today. So I just want to share with you some random thoughts about a couple of things. First of all, Priscilla, I've studied restorative justice. I did a restorative justice training course. I fully appreciate what you're doing and what you've done. I actually did it with a man in Ireland, Sean, that you may know because he was very much involved in the Glen Cree Reconciliation Centre. I can't think of his name, but I'll share that with you another day. Very interested in what you say about democracy and autocracy. And of course, we know that democracy is so much better than autocracy. And I was interested in what you had to say about sociocracy. But with democracy, you can have the tyranny of the majority. We're suffering that at the moment, especially in the current climate, where courts are using the concept of the common good to defeat any challenges to claims that our constitutional rights are being breached in light of this current pandemic situation, but that's a whole other story. It also leads me to the issue of the concept of equality. For years and years, I promoted equality. I was on various equality commissions, and I actually thought this was an important concept. I now recognize that it's not, that it's actually far more important to have your freedom. So maybe that's a debate we could have for another day. I think freedoms are more important than equality. That's just one thing I wanted to say. And then with regard to what she's gone now, Barty was talking about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And of course, Sean will also appreciate this. The Jesuits, whom we know run the world, always said, show me the boy of 7 and I will show you the man. And so, you know, I fully, like all of you, appreciate the fact that our subconscious is the program which runs us, and therefore I have a personal particular interest in having such important educational regime is the wrong word, but projects for our children, for our innocence, because what happens to you in your childhood and the traumas that occur to you in your childhood can affect you very severely, adversely for the rest of your life. So I have a personal interest in protecting the early childhoods of our innocence. It just is very, very important to me personally because of my own particular childhood, and I've studied this, and it's very, very important, profound work that Barty is doing, and I fully support it, and I think it's crucial. But whilst I was waiting to get on the call, because I didn't have the Zoom link, I was reading an article from a guy that connects with me on a regular basis. I mean, I subscribe to his newsletter, and his name is John Rappaport. And he was at one point a congressional candidate in the US, and he writes very interesting articles about the currently what's happening in the US with regard to the elections. But he's written books called On the Matrix and The Matrix Revealed, and he's done a lot of work in that particular area. But in his article today, he talked about a very famous hypnotist that he encountered some years ago who changed his mind about a lot of things. And what this hypnotist said was that when he hypnotized a lot of people, he found that they had this deep in their subconscious buried a monolith, which was like a major, major blockage. And it very often appeared in somebody's subconscious as a brick wall or a closed door beyond which they could never gain entry. And he felt this was really powerful and significant because these people could never get into the realm beyond where they could connect with the other aspects of their being and their dimensions. So they were limited because they reached this literally a dead end or brick wall, and many people described it as being a brick wall. But what he discovered, this hypnotherapist, was that this monolith, whatever form it took, was emanating a message out. It was saying, this is your reality. And that was the message it was giving to the subconscious. Now, he didn't get into how and where it got there. And we know there's lots of theories out there about implantations into people's subconscious from various sources. And that's a subject matter for another day. But whether they were put there by outside entities or whether they've been there for generations or reincarnations, that's again another matter. But what he found was that all of those people that had those monoliths, they were very passive. They revered the monolith. So whatever it told them was the reality, was what the reality was. Now, this particular man developed various techniques for breaking down that brick wall and that monolith in order to get into the psyche of the individual, to enable them to experience their freedoms and to develop themselves in ways which they wouldn't have otherwise. But one of the things he noticed about it was that it was designed to get those people to funnel their energies and their thoughts into a kind of unity consciousness, but not a healthy unity consciousness. It was a kind of unity consciousness which made them focus on a particular project or something that was individual, but it was like it was easy to corral these people into a single-minded approach about things. And of course, we're seeing a lot of that in the world today with regard to the way people are reacting to the situation regarding COVID. But anyway, that's another story. And I'm bringing it up because I thought Barty might have found this interesting and she might like to go and check this guy out and deal with it. And when I was waiting to get on, I spoke with a friend of mine and I was telling her about this. And she has a partner who is working in the quantum area, because I said, if you have, and symbolism is a very important aspect of this, because we know that those who are trying to control us use symbols. It's really important and it's powerful. It's part of the subliminal programming we get on TV and in advertising. We know that, and it's very, very negative. You also get it with Hollywood film stars who use a lot of satanic ritualistic symbology, the Baphomet symbology. It's all over Hollywood. So we have that as well, which is very, very negative. So what I was thinking was, what we need to combat that on a very deep level are positive symbols like sacred geometry to counteract that, because it has to be counteracted at a deep, deep level. It's like you can't tell people the truth. If they've got these monograms basically in their subconscious, you can tell somebody the truth until you're blue in the face, but they simply will not be able to see it. So until you sort of smash that monolith inside, either using quantum, there's, and you may know more about this, Mishra, but there are people out there who are using quantum physics, whether it's using sound or symbology or some other things that can change programs like that at a deep level. I don't fully understand it, but I have a sense that there may be something out there that can be done on that, in that regard. And I'm just throwing it out there in case anybody wants to, you know, pick up on that and maybe take it further.
Yeah, no, thank you, Una. I mean, there is a whole field called quantum healing, which some people...
Exactly. And you know, and I've done some of that as well. But I just say there's other ways in which we can, you know, heal people and help them to find the truth for themselves. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, you've raised like a million new subjects that we should.
I know.
We could go around again and have another conference about.
Of course.
But maybe next month, because we meet.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience.
We'll bring some of those. Thank you so much. So, Sean, do you want to add something about your piecework and what's happening in Ireland these days? Are you headed for reunification, perhaps?
Well, no, I just want to say, Thomas, thank you very much for, again, organising such a stimulating debate across from the very first, your ideas from the very beginning of the debate. So I don't really want to bring up anything else because we've covered so much in the area. So I think I'll leave what I'm going to say till the next meeting or the meeting after. But I'm really delighted that you have organised these groups, and I'm certainly getting a lot out of it. I mean, I'm working on different areas myself, but some of the ideas here across the board, they're very important, and it's great that we're doing this work this way, that you're coordinating it. So thanks very much.
Yeah. And what's your book on, Sean? Just remind people that haven't met you before. What's the latest book?
Yes, I'm just working, and that's why I'm really my mind is up in the air at the moment about different things. But it's about the myths and delusions of modernity, and it does fit into a lot of what people were saying here today about how our realities are shaped by some of the myths that we don't accept our myths, of course, because we're living in a modern world. That's the sort of background area, and I'm looking at a lot of different approaches to that. Right.
Well, good luck with that. I'm sure we'll all look forward to the book. Gila, are you still with us in Israel? I'm not sure. We can't see your picture. Gila's joining us from Herzliya, which is a beautiful town in Israel. I've been there. It's got the most incredible beaches. Hello, Gila. Do add anything. Gila's been working with peace and conflict resolution and spiritual science. She's an expert in the Qabalah and so on. So any final thoughts, Gila?
Yes, I would like to say something. Thank you. It was interesting. I mean, it's like a big cake, as somebody said, that we are baking together. When I sat at home by myself, when I was thinking about this little conference, I was asking myself, what is peace? What is basically peace? Now, if I think, you know that I'm not an English, my English speaker. I mean, my mother tongue is Hebrew. So English is a foreign language for me. So if I play with the word peace, to me it sounds like a practical. I know that the spelling is different, but it it sounds like a piece of something, practical. I mean, if the message that I get as a foreigner from the word peace is a practical of peace, okay? If I take it to Hebrew, then the word is shalom. And the word shalom, if we take the roots of the word, of the verb that the word shalom is built on, is the three letters, Shin, Lamed, Mem, okay? And that conveys a message of wholeness. So I thought it's a very interesting meaning that comes through the actual word that one uses. And this thing of wholeness is basically what everybody, if we want to achieve peace, global peace, we can't achieve this level, we can't reach this level of global peace. We have to start with the minor peace, I would say, the inner peace of each one of us. Each one of us has to achieve this allness in himself, in his thoughts, in his feeling, in his life, in his past life. You know, we have to achieve this acceptance and allness about us. Once we achieve that, we can look outside and try to achieve a much bigger allness, which is the allness between me and you, between us. Am I clear? Am I getting through?
Yeah.
Hello, Thomas?
Yeah, we can hear what you're saying, I think.
Yes, so am I being understood? The thing of wholeness, which is very important to achieve this level of wholeness in all levels of existence. If you want to compare it to what you said about relativity, so in relativity, you have the small particles which are not visible, and you have the way that phenomenon behave in the real world, we call it, what is that we can appreciate it, or like, you know, the difference between Newton and Einstein. And it was a long time, there was a difficulty to make a one theory of all. So it's the same if you take it in this perspective. If you look at the wholeness of the inner little person and the allness and the global allness. Now, that leads me to, if we speak about allness, it's getting the wholeness, the harmonizing of our energies, of our chakra systems, and also harmonizing the vibrations, if we would like to put it like that, from the heart with the vibrations of the mind, with the vibrations of the solar plexus, and the vibrations of the gender. The whole, all of our being has to be harmonized together to get that wholeness. And once you get that wholeness, you can open yourself to accept the other, because you were talking about conflict. What makes conflict? Conflict is being achieved or arose when we don't accept the other, when we can't see his point of view, when we differentiate between I and him. Now, when we achieve this allness in ourselves, we open ourselves, we make ourselves more flexible, less rigid. So that makes us or enable us to accept the other as well. And it stops being I and him. It can be a sort of togetherness. And it's very important in this thing. I heard the other, the one who spoke before me, he was talking about rationalism. But with rationalism, we create more and more differentialism. The other thing is to go to our heart, to find the point of love in our heart. For instance, in Hebrew, heart is lev, and lev in English, you speak about love. So you can see even the connection between this kind of energy. So only through love, when you achieve this wisdom of the heart and of love, and then you are able to accept yourself, you are able to accept the other. And once you achieve that, you can make the connection with the divine. And it's and in other words, it's achieving the unity, but how is it called? The unity with unity out of unification. I mean, we don't lose our identity and our association, because we have reached out, each one has to reach his wholeness. But once we reach that, we are able to accept the other and to accept this global peace. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
That's in short.
Yeah, thank you, Gila. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Okay.
And you've summed up in a word the quintessence of, centuries of Hebrew thought. This search for the wholeness, which sounds very much in English like allness. It's partly your accent, but just also.
Yes, I'm sorry about my accent. Yes,
no, it's lovely. We love the accent. But the allness and the wholeness, they are actually connected. And I just want to finish with a couple of concluding remarks, going back to my remarks at the very beginning. I talked about how the universe is a manifestation of everything all at once, every number. We're in the field of the gods of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. It was the remarkable insight of the Hebrew sages to find and focus on the unity. But I think there's an esoteric and an exoteric monotheism. Exoteric monotheism means the God of my tribe is the only one. You must all worship and bow down and worship my God. That's exoteric monotheism. Esoteric monotheism is what Spinoza was doing and what Abraham was doing and what I believe Muhammad and Jesus were doing, is looking for the real hidden unity behind reality. And that's why many Christian, Jewish, and Islamic mathematicians became such geniuses. They invented algebra in Baghdad because he was inspired by that search for the divine unity, which Gila calls the wholeness or allness. And the word Allah is connected to that, or Elohim. My concluding thoughts then are we need to walk towards the possibility of a wholeness. As our scientists reminded us, it's not going to happen tomorrow. And where we can unify all our scientific methodologies, our mathematical sciences, and our religious sciences. People have tried, they've been pioneers, people like Rudolf Steiner, Carl Jung, Assagioli, Ken Wilber, John Gebser, they're all doing their bit. Einstein as well dabbled in, he was always searching for the unified field theory, which he never found. My proposition is we won't find it till we factor in consciousness. Jung and Wolfgang Pauli, the physicist, worked on the mathematics of synchronicity. Synchronicity has 3 vectors, time and space, but also consciousness or mind. Only when physicists and theologians discuss the mathematics of mind and how they impact on time and space, I think, will we get that unified field theory, which is going to be a unified divine field theory, right? And just my finishing point is, how is it possible that we're all here? Let's end with some wonder, right? Aristotle said the beginning of philosophy is to wonder at stuff. Wondering should be the purpose of every class, every school, every university lecture ever. Well, wondering how the stars stay in one place. I mean, it seems to me the stars are a great model for the mathematics of spirituality, because you can have binary systems with two stars. That's the two idea. Sirius has two stars, A and B. They rotate around each other. You can have unitary or mono star systems like Sol, where we have just one sun. Other star systems have three. Others have clusters. And then there's 100 billion stars in our galaxy alone. 100 billion stars in all different computations, permutations, and all that. So how do they all stay together? Well, it's this thing called gravity, right? Which we still don't know what causes it. Gravity waves haven't been discovered. We don't know what causes them. There are different theories. Relativity, general relativity has one theory. Lesage had another theory. And it's still a matter of ongoing debate. I want to leave you with a final equation. To me, what gravity is in the physical world of physics and science, love is in the ethical world. It seems to me that love, which some people have spoken about, Gila just referred to it, love is the gravity that binds souls together and you know, orchestrates our relationships as individuals, families, lovers, and as planets and nations. If we honor love properly as individuals and also societies, communities, we will be, I think, making exploration into what that fundamental force is, that gravity of the moral universe. And when people act out of hate, there is a counterforce to love. It's called hate, and it pushes apart, just as gravity brings together, so hate pushes apart. The hate people are what Una talked about, people that deliberately misinform or lie or cheat or steal or terrorize or use violence. Our job, we're love people, is to find a way to outthink, out-strategize, and re-educate the hate people. Because I think the hate people, deep down, they're all love people. It's just they've forgotten their basic primal codes, you know. But it seems to me that love is that primal gravity that holds the whole universe together, morally, as well as physically. And what's really weird, I just say this as a little young academic setting out in peace studies at London, I launched my institute journal to focus on the nature of love. It's still the only academic journal in the world on the nature of love. Can you believe it? There's millions of journals on every other branch of knowledge, physics, chemistry, you know. It's a whole prestigious rat race to get published in these journals, and there's millions of them. There's only one on the nature of love, which is, I edited. I mean, it's bonkers, but it's true. So that shows you how little academia cares about love. It's not important to research. And yet everyone scrabbles after a PhD, which means a lover of wisdom, a philosopher. You know, there's something not quite right there. So anyway, I'd invite you all, you can submit an article on your views on the nature of love for our next issue, the 14th issue of the Love Journal. And with those last remarks, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. It's been a refreshing and wonderful event. We had another keynote speaker who was going to talk about brain science and polarization, but they've been caught up in a traffic jam in India and couldn't join us, sadly. But, you know, we'll do the next month. So I wish everybody, you know, excellent forthcoming few weeks. And let's hope that the movement, the progress is in the direction of love. Let's meet up at the Love Mountain. And if you meet any hate people, just tell them, you know, educate them, please. Okay, thank you so much, and blessings to everyone. Shalom.
Shalom.
Thanks, Thomas.
And I have kept the chat. I've got a copy of it. If anyone wants, I can send you an email of the whole chat. And likewise, then there's all the links and stuff in there. And thank you to Nicola again for helping behind the scenes, and everyone that's spoken. And Anna for joining us from the East Midlands in England. She's working in schools and doing important work. Do you want to say a few words, Anna, just to say goodbye? Can you use any of what you've learned today in your school when you go back tomorrow?
I just, thank you. My thought about the school, when the schools was mentioned, I'd just like to let them know that there's nothing actually wrong with them, and they need to respect themselves so much more and not bully each other so much, actually, in there that I've seen that's happened. Yeah, sorry.
Oh. Bullying is a problem. Yeah, Anna's been deeply involved in spiritual searching and for many years, so maybe she can say something next month. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Shalom,
you.
blessings, and let's get headed in the direction of the right mountain.
Okay, bye.
Shalom.